Give me the thumbs up when we're good to go. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee for Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. This will just be a quick meeting to approve some minutes, and then we're going to go into a council meeting. And so to kick things off for this afternoon, I would like to acknowledge that in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we are gathered in the heart of Treaty 7 territory of Southern Alberta. This land that we call home is also home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, also the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and our most adjacent Indigenous neighbors, the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Chiniki First Nations. Further, we are located within the Rocky View Métis District, within the Battle River Territory, District 4. Okay, so we have one item on our agenda, but I will move that we approve the agenda for February 11th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll move to our only item, and that's approval of the minutes, which the reason we called this meeting was we thought it was best to do since we're about to consider the actions resulting from these minutes. So we want to make sure that they're approved. So looking at the minutes from January 16th Finance Committee, are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I move approval of the minutes of the January 16th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I now move that we adjourn the Finance Committee meeting. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. All right. So I will now call to order a special meeting of council for Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. And we've already done a land acknowledgement for this afternoon, and so I'm going to move straight to the agenda. Now, there is a walk-on item, and it's H2, Fire Resource Improvement Association Alberta, FRIAA, FireSmart Capital Project, Larch 2025, Project 7391. Given that there's a report that was done and circulated that should form part of the record, before putting the agenda forward for approval, I am going to move that we add this agenda item as urgent business and direct the municipal clerk's office to add the reports and attachments to the agenda for the official record. Would anybody like to speak to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. That needed 2/3 majority. We have that. So now I'll move approval of the agenda for the February 11th, 2025 special meeting of council as amended. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to, first of all, item G1, which is the Canmore Community Housing 100 Palliser Lane Loan Bylaw 2025-07. Ms. Gibbons, welcome to council.
You're going to get a lot of me this afternoon. So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The first item for discussion today is the Canmore Community Housing 100 Palliser Lane Loan Bylaw 2025-07. So the motion before you this afternoon is that Council give first reading to this bylaw. It's been quite a while since the town has done a loan bylaw, so as a reminder, under Section 265(1) of the MGA, the town is permitted to loan money to certain organizations, which would include CCH as a nonprofit organization that is wholly owned by the town, and the loan must be authorized by bylaw. The bylaw must set out the amount, purpose, terms, and source, and the bylaw must be advertised. Now, the town has been involved in the development of CCH's prior projects. However, a different approach was taken to financing. Historically, funding had come through more traditional financial institutions, and the town would provide a loan guarantee as additional security. Due to the proposed scale and complexity of this development, which I'll speak to next, along with the opportunity to obtain better rates and terms, CCH and the town administration have been working together on a new financing model. The purpose of the loan bylaw is to support the intended development at 100 Palliser Lane by CCH. It is intended to be a 144-unit purpose-built rental residential complex. CCH has applied to the Apartment Construction Loan Program through Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, as this program provides low-cost loans for developers who are building purpose-built rental apartments. However, the program does not provide 100% of the necessary financing, and a portion is required from the developer, in this case 25% of the total construction value. As CCH doesn't have sufficient resources to cover that percentage of a project of this magnitude, this loan of $12 million from the town would go towards CCH's 25%. Then, once construction is complete and CCH has a long-term insured mortgage in place, the proceeds of that mortgage would be used to repay the town for the loan for the construction. The bylaw outlines some of the key terms of the loan. The rate of the interest to be paid is 2.57% per annum. The term is set at 3 years from the time the town advances the funds, and the source of the funds is from our cash and investments. So this is the timeline for the bylaw. Today is obviously first reading, assuming that's approved, and then it will be advertised both this week and next. The petition opportunity will end on March 7th. Second and third reading are planned for the special meeting on March 11th, and then the 30-day court application period would pass on April 10th. In conclusion, our recommendation is that Council give first reading to Canmore Community Housing 100 Palliser Lane Loan Bylaw 2025-07. I'm happy to take any questions, and I also see Mr. Matthews here if there are maybe specific project questions I can't speak to.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Gibbons, and thank you, Mr. Matthews, for being here today as well. Looking to council to see if there are any questions. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation. I just had a question with regards to item 5 in the bylaw itself, where it speaks to interest and the term of the loan. If CCH decides to pay those dollars off earlier than within the 3, does that mean that less interest will accrue to?
I think that's the intent. I think I should have printed a copy and brought it with me, but
That's
I
okay.
believe it speaks to that payment will be made prior to or at the latest to that 3 years. So really the intent was to provide that flexibility, and the longest the term could be is
Perfect.
3 years. But absolutely.
I just wasn't sure if the same rules applied to this like it does with when we loan from the Alberta Financial, we haven't done it for a few years, but the length of the loan is the length of the loan, and it is what it is, and I just wanted to know if that was different. So
Yes,
thank you so much.
Province doesn't offer that flexibility. We as the town can.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you.
Looking to see if there are any other questions. Councillor Maw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for being here, Ms. Gibbons. Question here with regards to the timing. I know CMHC will forward us funds. With regards to the 25% being the 12 million, how does that work exactly? Does that 12 million need to be actually cashed out and actually physically within an account before the remaining 75% starts to flow through?
So those are the details that I think we're still working out.
Okay.
We've been working to try to negotiate with CMHC to try to delay that requirement for our portion. I say our cumulatively CCH and the town for that portion to be contributed, again, so that money can remain in our accounts earning interest for us for as long as possible. Okay. So some of those details I think will still be fleshed out in the ultimate agreement with CMHC, and where I believe I had some language in the report that spoke to we'll issue the funds when they're needed, with the intent being that they'll earn interest for us for as long as possible until such time as they are actually required, and we were still negotiating some of that.
Well, thank you so much for trying to optimize the terms. And there's been some questions in the community. Just to confirm, the 2.5% interest rate, that's a fixed rate, correct?
Correct.
Awesome.
We just wanted to provide certainty
Okay.
on both sides, and from our perspective, it was meant to be a proxy of what our investments are earning. It's still to see CCH's, all these C acronyms, benefit, it's lower than what the market is yielding right now.
Totally. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I don't see any, so thank you very much for your presentation. I'll now move the council give first reading to Canmore Community Housing 100 Palliser Lane Loan Bylaw 2025-07. Speaking to the motion, this is essentially a construction bridge loan with CCH being 100% owned by the town. We'd ultimately be responsible, and so it's important that we move this project forward. And it is going to be coming back to us when it's replaced by the traditional mortgage financing after it's constructed. So I think that this is an excellent opportunity for the town with this project, and therefore I support this bylaw. Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support the bylaw. I think that this is a really important project to move forward. And while the mechanism of this financial support is different than what we have provided in the past, it is the same principle and concept that we are helping to bridge the financing gap and get housing built that our community needs. So thank you to everyone for their hard work on this one.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very pleased to support this. And I want to thank Chris Mathieu and Chelsea for their great work, kind of kept this across the line. I think the other thing that's interesting to point out too is that throughout this whole process, even with this project, CCH is continuing to apply for grants to lessen the burden. So this is a worst case scenario, and fingers crossed we're able to access some of that as we go through. Thank you.
Yes, certainly appreciate how Mr. Matthew and Ms. Gibbons and others have been working together to get this project all ready to get constructed. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be speaking in support of this bylaw today. I really believe that this project, 100 Palliser Lane, will be absolutely transformational for our community. And so I believe that this is an excellent use of taxpayers' funds, and the repayment terms to be more than fair for both the town as well as CCH. And I look forward to watching you guys cut a ribbon.
You got to know you'll be invited, I'm thinking. There you go. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. All right, we will now move to item H1, which is the 2025-2026 operating and capital budget approval. Ms. Gibbons, back to you.
Thank you. Load up the right one. Okay, so next is the 2025 and 2026 budget approval. Today, the plan is to provide a high-level overview of the operating and capital budgets and then look to council to approve them. To start, I was going to provide a quick overview of the Finance Committee recommended budget. The objective of the Finance Committee is to demonstrate fiscal responsibility in a transparent and public manner, which was demonstrated by holding 6 public meetings to review operating and capital budgets and plans, and by making numerous amendments. Finance Committee recommended these revised budgets be brought to Council for approval. The presentation today will focus on the details of the budget as recommended by the Finance Committee. Council-approved policy directs administration on financial matters, including transfers to reserves, debt, and the application of cost of living allowance to staff wages. Council's strategic plan directs administration on Council's priorities for the community. Master plans approved by Council for planning purposes identify long-range priorities across the organization. Additionally, most programs, services, and tasks are delivered through regular, routine municipal operations, providing important and highly valued services to the community and in alignment with Council's overall vision and goals. These programs and services are either legislated, essential, or approved in previous budget cycles and form most of the operating budget. This budget is for the final 2 years of Council's 2023 to 2026 strategic plan. Council created this strategic plan early in 2022, where the vision and goals were developed, including 3 to 4 results for each. Council's 3 goals are livability, environment, and relationships, and the foundational pillars of financial stewardship, human resources, and community engagement were also updated. Significant work to address this plan and its priorities is included throughout the budget, both through the continuation of existing programs and services and new items coming forward for 2025 and 2026, such as the Livability Tax Program, funds for the implementation of the Climate Emergency Action Plan, and an increase for an Indigenous market at the National Indigenous Day event. The starting point for this year's budget, as brought to Finance Committee initially, was based on the status quo. This included the cost to maintain existing programs and services at existing levels or those service adjustments previously accepted by.
I'm just going to interrupt, sorry.
Sure.
Are you able to project
Oh,
towards the mic a little bit?
Yep.
I'm getting a message that it's not being picked up very well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can't be heard over Zoom.
I'm
Thank you
also
very much,
short,
and
which
sorry
doesn't
for
help.
interrupting.
no, thank you for that. I want to make sure.
Thank you.
Is that better? I'm guessing that's Councillor Graham, maybe?
Yeah, give it a go. I've got my volume maxed on this end, and I'm just having a hard time hearing everybody. But I'll work with it as best I can. If I'm missing stuff, I'll let you know.
The mic and I are getting really intimate now. Okay. The starting point for this year's, but I'm just going to start from the beginning now. I've totally lost my train of thought. The starting point for this year's budget, as we brought it to the Finance Committee initially, was based on the status quo. So this included the cost to maintain our existing programs and services at their existing levels, or those service adjustments previously accepted by Council in budget plans. High levels of inflation, higher borrowing costs due to increased rates, and decreased funding from all levels of government have led to an increase in the town's budget required to provide the same service to the same levels in previous years. Also, in recent years, the pace of change and growth in the community has accelerated and is anticipated to further accelerate into the future. This is especially challenging given the environment of the financial constraints we just identified. In certain areas, new positions were required to address this growth in the community. Affiliates were provided with the same budget direction. However, there were some significant changes in requests from previous years, so there was greater emphasis and discussion on these items at the Finance Committee than there had been in prior years. As mentioned earlier, record inflation, higher borrowing costs due to increased interest rates, and decreased funding from all levels of government have led to an increase in the budgets. This town budget ensures the funding is in place to continue to deliver existing town programs and services, as well as address the service level changes that were recommended by the Finance Committee. High inflation is being felt across the board in our expense categories. COLA of 3.9% and 2% for the upcoming years have been included. Rising interest rates are impacting borrowing costs for any debt-funded projects, and at the same time, we are not expecting any increases or new grants from other levels of government. In fact, grants overall are budgeted to decrease 6.4% for 2025, with a further 3.7% reduction in 2026. The pace of growth in the community is anticipated to escalate in coming years, particularly when we examine the trends in average approved construction values. But while we can anticipate this growth, it is outside the town's control to a certain extent, so the timing can be difficult to forecast with accuracy, and some needs are required to be in place before that growth comes online. The situation created by all these factors coming together at once and the interplay between them is particularly challenging to plan for. So next we'll go through a quick summary of the actual 2025 to 2030 operating budget and plan. I'm going to start with the expenses since that is the main driver of the budget, what it costs to deliver the programs and services of the town, both the continuation of existing programs and services and the projected costs of any service level increases or stemming from service level decreases as recommended by the Finance Committee. Total expenditures and transfers are budgeted at $99.8 million in 2025 and up to $106.6 in 2026, the year in which we surpass a budget of $100 million. Each of those years presently includes $12 million related to the new Livability Tax Program, and these are increases over the $77 million budget from 2024. When we look at the drivers of these increased expenses, there are several categories they can be grouped into. The first is uncontrollable expenses and third-party cost increases, which includes items like increases to our insurance costs, bank service fee increases, transit costs, contracted services, support for our affiliates, professional fees in 2025, and then the RCMP contract and supplies and energy in 2026. The next category is human resource costs, which includes COLA, that cost of living adjustment, market and equity adjustments, additional staffing and fire rescue, and new positions related to the strategic priorities, growth, and the implementation of the Livability Tax Program, in addition to increased benefit costs. Debt servicing costs are increased, both due to rising interest rates as well as new projects. And increased transfers to reserves are also included, such as general capital, asset replacement and rehab, the new livability reserve, the flood mitigation structure maintenance reserve, as well as the art trust fund and general municipal operating in 2025 only. On the revenue side, revenues and transfers from all other sources other than taxation are identified, and those total $51 million in 2025 and $54.5 million in 2026. The balance is funded through municipal tax, so $46.8 million in general municipal taxes and $12 million in the livability tax program in 2025, and $40.1 million in general municipal taxes and $12 million from the livability tax program in 2026. Now here I've grouped the tax items together, but again, the taxes collected through the livability tax program will be used only to support affordability in Canmore, like developing non-market homes, the infrastructure to support them, as well as covering the administration and enforcement of the program. When we look at the drivers of changes in the town's revenue, anticipated new growth has resulted in some increase to the expected tax base. As mentioned with the previous slide, additional taxes are to be collected under the livability tax program to support that program and its projects and initiatives. Increases are also expected in paid parking, recreation, franchise fees, and application revenues. Increased transfers are also budgeted from reserves, the new livability reserve, and then in 2025 only, the art trust fund sustainability and development application reserves. Decreased transfers are budgeted from photo radar, tax stabilization, and the vital homes reserve. So all these factors have resulted in this budget. So excluding the new livability tax program, the 2025 and 2026 operating budgets ensure funds are in place for the delivery of operating programs and services. And net expenditures and transfers are budgeted at $50.9 million for 2025 and $54.5 million in 2026, which was up from $42.1 million in 2024. Municipal taxes then form $36.8 million and $40.1 million in each of those years. These result in a tax increase of 3.9% in 2025 and 7.1% in 2026 as the budgeted new municipal tax net of growth. And again, the livability tax program taxes and expenses are both budgeted at $12 million in each of 2025 and 26. The impact of the general municipal tax increase on a median residential household with an assessment of $1.043 million will be approximately $83 per year, or roughly $7 per month. Are there any questions on anything on operating so far? Otherwise, my intent would be to move on to capital. Okay, perfect.
I'm not seeing any. Please proceed.
I know there's a lot of content, so I thought I'd split it up. Policy, strategic and alignment, the available funding envelope, grant availability, and the assets we need to maintain drive the preparation of the capital budget. And as a reminder, it's not just physical, tangible capital assets. We do also include in the capital budget things like building improvements, vehicles, or any studies and plans. The 25-26 capital budget sets out the detail for capital expenditures for approval, and the planning summary for the 6 years projects future capital needs, estimated costs, and funding requirements within the context of the town's available and projected financial resources. The capital projects included in this budget for your approval fall generally into one of 5 categories. So one would be council priorities. The second would be around public safety. That could include the flood mitigation program, any hazard repairs, or other significant risks to the community. The third is plans and studies, which could include growth management plans or condition assessment developments. The fourth is around life cycle and asset management. So that includes our system level condition assessments around things like bridges and roads, inspections and industry best practices, or any assets at failure or near failure. And the final category would be growth or upgrade projects, so new or expanded infrastructure that's required for growth or improvements to address needs. These are the totals of the capital budgets and plans for each year. The average annual capital envelope used for those 6 years is roughly $44.2 million. As a reminder, administration is trialing a new approach to protecting individual capital project budgets before the request for proposal process to ensure that we have competitive bidding, and then the amounts of any capital projects will be released and available later after the RFPs are awarded. So just a reminder, we're showing the totals but protecting individual project budgets. Beyond these projects funded in the current budgets and plans, there is a further $107.1 million in unfunded capital projects in that same 6-year window. Now, since the conclusion of the Finance Committee meetings, a couple of pieces of new information have come forward that have been outlined as alternatives for Council consideration. The first pertains to an update regarding the livability tax program. The town has now received the final assessment values for the 2025 tax year and has compared the municipal tax revenue for the livability tax program to the total assessed value of the residential, non-primary residential subclass. Based on that analysis, collection at $12 million sits closer to 0.47% of that assessed value, rather than the previous estimates at 0.4% before those assessment values had been finalized. If the program collection was instead to be approximately that 0.4% of the assessed value, the value would be closer to $10.3 million for each of those years. The assessment numbers may still be corrected or revised slightly, however, this is the best information we have at this point. And then the two motions are on the slide should council wish to consider them. And then the next item in discussions with CCH. CCH was approached about an opportunity where owners of a residential unit are offering to sell the unit to CCH at an amount that would be consistent with their Vital Homes ownership program and below its market value. However, if the town were to receive the property, the owner could be provided with a tax receipt for the difference between the market value and the sales price. The unit is intended then to be transferred to CCH for sale through their Vital Homes ownership program, with the proceeds returned to the town such that the full amount spent by the town would be recovered. And then there's a motion around that one should council wish to consider it. And that concludes my presentation this afternoon. These are the motions before council, and I'm happy to take any additional questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons, and thank you to your whole team and all of administration in their work pulling together this budget. Of course, we're very familiar with it through the Finance Committee work. I just wanted to reiterate, though, that we recognize that it's a lot of work each year, and it's one of the primary roles of council is to approve a budget, and it's very much appreciated, and it gives a lot of confidence to council, given the amount of work that has been put into it. Looking to council to see if there are any questions. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. I wonder if you could help me understand further the 0.47 rate of the the livability tax. Why that number didn't come in closer to the 0.4 that we were looking for.
So if I could take a step back, maybe I think at the start of all of the housing action work and the analysis that was done, there were a number of data points that were looked at to come up with the estimate that we had of what we thought the non-primary residences were in this community. But there was a significant amount of uncertainty around that.
Absolutely.
So what's happened since then is we had the actual declarations that were submitted by the end of December. So even when we started Finance Committee, we didn't have that data yet. Then the assessor takes some time to go through all that data. So it all depends on the assessed value of individual properties and how they move. And so now that we have that final assessed value of that class, and we actually know which properties have declared their property as a primary residence or not, that's really where that fluctuation is coming from, both which properties have declared primary residence and which haven't, and then the actual value increases of each of those categories and how that plays out. So back in the fall, there was a lot of uncertainty. We had a number of data points we were looking at. I believe it was the census. I think we looked at some utility information. I can't remember what the other data sources were. And so we had an estimate at that point, and it's come in slightly different. We'll be continuing to validate once we start auditing the program, that we can validate some of the declarations and which properties are in which category. But this is the best information we have at this point, again, based on how people have declared and the final assessed value that comes from our assessor.
Thank you. Would you say that we got fewer primary residents than we were expecting, or in the end?
I would say, this is a little bit anecdotal, but I would say based on where the percentages landed, slightly higher primary residential than we were anticipating. So more people
Right.
declared, so that's why the number kind of crept up from the 0.4%. That was, again, our best estimate, but I will
Yeah,
say with
for
a
sure.
lot of uncertainty, closer to the 0.47%. And we'll continue to validate it as we get that KPI information for the program.
Of course.
As I see it, of course, the estimates before declarations are made, you're simply looking at percentages and average assessed values and trying to come up with something. Now that you have properties identified through the declaration process, there may be more, but it tells me that the assessed value of that group is perhaps lower. And then in order to get to the 12, you have to tax higher, or have a higher percentage of their value to get to that 12 million. And so, and this is the way it's going to go with this program as we proceed through going through a year, and then second year, third year, we'll get more precise with our estimates because we'll have more data.
Yeah, and that was really why as soon as we had these values, we wanted to run this calculation and bring this information as soon as we had it available to council, because all the work Ms. Rogers and Ms. Van Campima did was based on the best information we had at that time, which still had a lot of uncertainty. Exactly as you say, now we know which properties are in which category and what their assessed value was assessed at for the end of 2025.
Thank you,
Anything else?
Ms. Gibbons, really appreciate that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm going to navigate us through these motions because there's some potential alternative motions to be considered. It will take a few more steps than usual. So first of all, I will get the motion right in front of me for the approvals. So I'm first going to move that council approves the 2025 operating budget for $99,774,180 and 2026 operating budget for $106,601,833 and adopt the 2027-2028 operating plans as presented. So with that on the table, then I am going to move an amending motion that council direct administration to reduce the municipal taxes collected through the livability tax program to $10.3 million for each of 2025 and 2026, and to reduce the transfer to the livability reserve by the corresponding $1.7 million in each year. In speaking to the motion, it was a very important marker for me to be at no more than the 0.4, because that 0.4 roughly translated to an amount estimated to be just under the amounts taxed for tourist homes. That is a measure of reasonability for me, that in Canmore we would tax within that sort of an envelope. Tourist homes also are residential units that are not primary residential. They have commercial capabilities, and so they're taxed at the commercial rate. When we're looking at the livability tax form in second homes, we're also talking about housing that it is not have a primary resident, or is not solely for a primary resident. And so I think that to keep the livability tax form within that sort of a margin, instead of going where other municipalities have gone and taxing it 1, 2, or 3% of the assessed value, I would like to see us stay within that mark that's set by the tourist homes. And so I'd ask you to consider supporting this motion. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question through the chair to the chair. We heard administration explain to us that there'll be some auditing happening over the coming months. And so should we find out that there are more or less residents, primary residents, than we are seeing right now, how would that play out? Would that be something that would be surplus to the following year? Or, yeah,
Well, I think it's just like any budget process, and what we have now is better information than we had then. Just like every budget, we go in with the best information, not looking to overtax.
oh, of course not, yeah.
And if there's a surplus, then we apply it at a later date. We
So it'd be
direct where
like
it's
this,
coming.
a surplus within a surplus?
Yeah.
So it would stay within
Yeah.
the
this
tax
ser-
program, the
ser-
reserve program?
Anything raised through this program should stay within this program.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that it would actually be recognized and that a future year not penalized as a
Yeah,
result of
and-
that.
And we will, as we go, the next time we'll have data that's even more informed
Of course.
than right now.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Good question, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Hillstat.
I will also support the motion for basically many of the same reasons that you've already stated, so I'm not going to repeat them all. But I do think it is important to keep it at that 0.4 to, again, as you said, to keep it just below the tourist home rate, so I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the amending motion? Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be speaking in support of this motion. I was within the Finance Committee, the one that bring the motion forward to have this phase approach of 12 million and then 10 million. But I feel that within that discussion, there was definitely a commitment to stay within, and I recognized that amongst those that voted in favor, that they voted in favor because they wanted to align that number with, or that percentage with commercial taxation. Not more, not less. So I'm happy to honor that as part of my motion. Does it bum me out that we won't have more money to put towards housing our workforce, the backbone of our community? Yeah, but it is what it is. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Oh, Your Worship.
Oh, okay. Before I vote then, Councillor Graham, just under the bell. Or just after
Thank
the
you.
bell, but we'll go to you anyway.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a lag here. I too will be speaking in favor of this. I recognize that, we wanted to hit that, close that 0.4 mark. We kind of got to get at that number through a reverse calculation. And, it was always just an estimate. It'll always be, not quite a 0.4. It'll be something other than that, because when the data and the actuals do shake out, it is just an estimate. So I do recognize that the 0.47 is a little farther away than some people are comfortable with. For me, this policy was about one, funding housing initiatives in our community, and also the change of behavior. And I still want to point out that other municipalities have taken a much stronger approach, going from 1%, 3%, or up to 5% of value. And through administration, I think it's reasonable to say that our top end may be 0.8. So we do have limits, or we think we have limits through the MGA in that, and we're starting to get into that realm. But, I'm still happy with this program. I'm still happy that we're moving it forward. And I'm really, I want to just thank administration again for the hard work and knowing that data was coming in very real time and changing the numbers, and for our council being able to adapt to those. I do really appreciate that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no others that wish to speak to the motion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. So that brings us back to our original motion as amended. Just taking a look at my notes here. And because this only affects the amounts in the reserve, which are capital, it doesn't have to change the numbers in the original motion. So we have the original motion on the table. Well, that's what I have the information here in front of me. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Would anyone like to speak to the question? Councillor Faubert.
So this is that council approved the 2025 operating budget.
Yep.
Et
The
cetera?
original motion of the 2025 and 2026 and the plans for 2027, 2028. Yep.
I know that there's two motions, but I'll keep my remarks in this one for both the operating and the capital budget. I want to start by saying I'm really proud of the work that this council has done, our CAO and our administration, to put together this budget and to go through this budget process, while at the same time we are doing work to innovate and address the issues that our community faces through a new tax policy program that forms part of this budget. For me, I think that one of the most important things to note is the incredible value that our taxpayers or ratepayers get from what we deliver in services and how much it costs. I recently read somewhere that the city of Halifax just tipped into the $1 billion budget realm as a municipality. And the fact is that as one of the three levels of government, we deliver vital, important, and exceptional services to our residents. There's so much in this budget that it would be almost impossible to go through all the areas where the people in our community benefit from what we do. And I just really want, in terms of my support for this budget, to be clear that that value is what is part of being part of this community, right? We don't have our community if we don't have our municipal government, if we don't have functioning vital services, if we don't invest in things like community social development and FCSS. We don't have we don't have the things that we love here in Canmore without roads and taps with water that come out of them and garbage that gets taken away. And all of these things might not be glamorous or exciting to other people, but it's really important for me as part of this community that we deliver on what it is our core area of services. And I believe that we don't just do that, but we go above and beyond. And there are many ways that I can point out as examples of what we do as the town of Canmore that is above and beyond for our citizens. I look at the FCSS programs that we deliver. I look at the livability program that we deliver, the support that we've provided for the Homelessness Society, for our community groups. We increased grant funding this year. We have so much that relies upon the work that this organization does, and it makes me very humble to be part of this in my small way. And that, with that, I think, I do have a couple follow-up motions. But other than that, thank you for letting me wax on a bit there.
Great, thanks, Councillor. And I'll go to your motions arising after we approve the capital budget, okay? I'm just going to seek some certainty here. Should I have, I'm going to ask the CAO, should I have moved the motion with regards to the livability tax program after having approved the operating budget?
No. And I know I sent you an email telling you to do that, but I was actually wrong.
Okay.
So you're doing it perfectly right.
Okay.
What we will need to ask you to do, though, and this is my miss, is that we do actually need to also amend the operating numbers. So it does
Okay.
affect,
All right.
all that it affects is the surplus, which is funding capital. So if you're okay with it, I have the numbers here for the clerk, and we can update the 2025 and 2026 amounts. They'll both be 1.7 million less.
In the operating?
In the operating, and you already have the correct numbers
Oh,
in front
because
of
then
you
they're
for capital.
transferred to the livability?
Yeah.
Perfect, okay, yeah, so if we could get the.
Yeah.
Okay, then, I'm glad to hear I moved in the right way, but we do need to have corrected numbers. So let's just wait a moment. It doesn't change, I think, anything that Councillor Faubert spoke to. And while we're waiting for those numbers, I will speak to the motion as well. I was really happy that administration went through many hoops and many iterations before even coming to council to bring us a potential 5.6% increase to the budget outside of growth. And then through the work of the Finance Committee, we were able to bring that down to 3.9%. And because of the livability program, we were also able to fund some things through that that allowed us to make some changes to what were unfunded projects. So I'm very, very happy where this budget has landed. I believe, as Councillor Faubert described in detail, that this very much works in the best interest of the community as a whole and enhances the work that the town does and is able to do through making sure there's proper remuneration for staff, make sure that projects that are needing funding are funded, and to keep services moving ahead at a caliber that's expected by our citizens. So I very much support this, and I recognize that taxes cost everybody more. I'm happy that the median assessed home, the increase is just less than $7 a month, or about $83 a year. And while none of us like paying more, and it's going to cost all of us a little bit more, I think that this is a reasonable amount given all of the circumstances, the reduced funding that we are getting from other levels of government, as well as the increased cost of everything in this day and age that we're all experiencing in our family and professional lives. So now we have the revised numbers there. Okay, so the revised numbers then are for 2025, $98,074,180. And for 2026, $104,901,833. And thank you for getting those correct numbers there, so that the motion is accurate. Looking to see if anyone else would like to speak to this motion. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is my 15th budget and my last one. I know it's not very great. And I just think back about some of the things that I've had the opportunity to approve as part of this body that serves the people of Canmore. And I really agree with everything that Councillor Faubert said about the incredible services that we provide, and the quality of life that we work to achieve for our friends and neighbors and customers. And so it's interesting when I look back, like my first budget was 2010, and that was the first day that we actually approved transparency within our council chamber. So our first camera came out of the 2010 budget. And so everybody from home could sit in their pajamas and watch democracy in action downtown. In my third budget was the approval of Elevation Place. And in my sixth budget was the Affordability Tax Program, the Affordability Services Program, of which I'm very proud. I think it was my fifth budget that we approved Arts Place, fifth or fourth. And then a really, really important, update to our budget was my ninth budget when we approved our COVID response. And we really worked to take care of our staff and our citizens and our visitors. My second budget was the Centennial Park Playground, which was my first playground, and I was very happy to approve that for the kids of LGMS. And I think it was a couple of years later that administration helped, Mr. Camo helped me find a grant to put the accessible swing, and just in time for a young man to start grade 4 there who was in a wheelchair. And these are all really important services and basic services that, provincial governments and federal governments don't really have space really to look at. We are the most intimate form of government. We run into people everywhere, grocery store, on the street, at the dog park, on the trails, and we're incredibly accessible. So I think we need to remember how many hours that we spend on each budget and how much thought that goes into it, because it wasn't like this in the beginning. It felt like we were handed a big binder and we were just left to our own devices, and people that sat around here that were a bit more experienced than me knew what they were doing, and you were left to figure it out. So I really appreciate the work that administration does to bring this budget home, to align it with our priorities as a council and a community, in concert with our strategic plan and our business plans, to continue to deliver value to Canmore residents and visitors alike. So I guess you'll know I'm going to be speaking in favor of this budget. And I am proud of the work that we have done together and separate, because it doesn't always happen together. When we sit around here during finance committee and we face each other and we hash things out, I really feel like that is presenting democracy at its core to the people of Canmore, so that they can see how it is we are making decisions as our friends and neighbors and customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak to the operating budget motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move to the capital budget. And so move that council approve the 2025 capital budget for $39,748,398 and the 2026 capital budget for $44,932,506 and adopt the 2027 to 2030 capital plans as presented. Now, because of the motion that we've just made, I am going to move that council direct administration to amend the 2025 and 2026 capital budget by reducing the capital project budgets for housing in Palliser 2025 to $8,242,398, and housing in Palliser 2026 to $5,123,506. Speaking to this amending motion, these are the revised numbers based on the change to the livability tax overall budget and the previous amending motion that we considered as part of the operating budget. Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'm also now going to move an amendment with respect to the opportunity to purchase the property that was described in the administrative presentation. And so I move the following amending motion. The council direct administration to amend the 2025 capital budget by adding a new project, town land acquisition, in the amount of $375,000 to be funded from the general capital reserve. I'm very appreciative for the generosity of the property owners that are making this opportunity available so that this home can become a Vital Homes ownership property, and we'll be able to house a family who are primary residents here for some time, and presumably when it's sold at some point, it will then also fund another family at an accessible price point, as it will not be increasing with the market appreciation. This is a wonderful opportunity. It's essentially a net zero impact to our reserves when it's all done. While it's going to cost $375 from general capital reserve at the start, that will be recouped when the property is ultimately sold. And so by making this happen, we're housing a family at an affordable rate, increasing the stock in Vital Homes, and once again, very appreciative to the property owners that are making this possible. Would anybody else like to speak to the amending motion? Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. And it is my great hope that the family that have donated this to the workforce of Canmore are watching. I know that they wanted to remain anonymous, which is, this is probably one of the most generous gifts I've ever seen provided in our community. And it really speaks to the fact that people understand how housing is core, and that without it, for the core and the backbone of our community, we do not have a community. And so I'm very grateful to these people for this. I know that for some people that own, you know, whatever, that this is maybe not a big deal, but I think that the entire board was just in complete, like, pleasure shock when they heard this announced by our managing director. So gratitude to the folks that donated this, gratitude to the finance department that helped us find a way to thank them. And I'm really looking forward to hearing how happy the new family is that lives in this someday is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. Similar to Councillor McCallum, we're both on CCH, and it's been a hard couple of months. There's been lots of vitriol with regards to housing, and so when you have a good news story like this, you literally get floored by how generous and forward-thinking some people can be. And to the people that did do this, do know that you're deeply appreciated. I know you're recognizing you've been in this community and you wanted to give back. Your statement of giving back is very inspiring, and perhaps will inspire others as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone else wishing to speak to this amending motion? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I too just want to express my deep gratitude to these people that make just an incredible contribution. It was a win-win, with the town being able to issue the tax receipt, CCH being able to bring another property into the vinyl homes. These aren't things that come across the desk every day. And seeing this announcement, seeing this has been one of the highlights of my term. And thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hillstead?
I'll also be supporting, and again, it was very generous of them to sell this unit to now the town, which then will go to CCH at a reduced rate. And also the fact that they were willing to do this just straight to CCH before a tax receipt that actually came from the board, just being like, is there something we can do? So they didn't actually even want a tax receipt necessarily. It was more, the board was like, can we do something? And so that's how this all came about. So they were willing to do it just to do it. So I think that's just quite positive and just an amazing thing. So I'm happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, so then the original motion is amended as a result of these, and there's new numbers involved. So the new numbers are, or the new motion is, that council approved the 2025 capital budget for $38,423,398 and the 2026 capital budget for $43,232,506, and adopt the 2027 to 2030 capital plans as amended. Or is it still as presented?
Oh, sorry. The 2020 amended is probably cleaner.
Okay, yeah. So it will be as amended. That's the original motion, taking into account the changes to the livability tax fund reserves and the purchase of that home. Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I kind of want to speak about the operating and the capital, but no, it's just a fine time, I'm sure. And I too kind of want to speak to process and how we got here. And similar to Councillor McCallum, I'm thinking back on our first budget at the beginning of this term, and the way get a binder, and you're a new councillor and excited. One of the first things you get to do is look at that big budget, and thinking about the process then and compared to the process now, and how administration's walking us through each of these items. The fulsome debate that we are all having leading up to this meeting, I think is really important. And I don't think that people go back and watch those meetings too often, but they are very enlightening and they're thoughtful. And I know that not all of council always agrees on everything that we're doing, but we do come to a conclusion at the end that we of where we're at. And I know for some councillors, the livability task force recommendations weren't everything that they wanted to support, and it took a little bit for them to kind of get behind those ideas. But I'm really proud that we did get there, and getting the livability task force across the line it is a pivotal step in the future of this community. I wholeheartedly believe that. So, seeing the flexibility there and seeing how council comes to those decisions and how we all work and debate. And, you know, we might not always agree, but I think that that is important. And that when people are dissenting, that it helps the policy get better. And, yeah, I just want to say thank you to all of my fellow council members for the fulsome debates that we had leading up to this. And, I'm really proud of this budget that we've put forward, and thank you to administration for the way you laid this one out for us this time. It really was a lot clearer to me than it's ever been before, and I appreciate that. So, thank you all. I look forward to supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to point out how, you know, our budget process is getting better and better, but at the same time, I think making budgets is getting more and more challenging. You know, funding that trickles down to municipal level, I think trickle is the right word, seems to be diminishing. And we do have a looming infrastructure crisis across this country. When we look at our budget, we did have moments where we tried to put money into reserves. We're trying to be fiscally responsible, trying to maintain as the best of a tax rate as we could, and we really did wiggle our way through the best what we could. And I really want to thank the councillors for decisions, and as you as well, Mayor, for getting us there. I also wanted to thank Therese Rogers. This was her last budget. And I also want to thank Chelsea for giving it a handoff. And so this is your first big one, and it was a very heavy lift to go from this to that. And administration, amazing. Rick, thank you for your encyclopedic knowledge of everything that Canmore costs. You probably know how much his pen costs. And these are big things, and I think one of the biggest moments of relief I have is when we get the budget across the line. So thank you to all.
Thank you, Councillor Hillstead.
This is actually just clarifying for the motion for the first number I'm getting to math right, but the second one, does it just drop down by the 1.7 million and add the 375? Because I'm getting or is there a different change there for the 43 million? Because I'm getting a slightly different number, but I'm not sure if that's just me or if something else changed that I didn't.
Well, let's double check, because we're,
That's what it is.
correct.
My math, not math, and that's what it is.
Okay, we're good.
Perfect.
Let's get across the line, guys.
Okay. So my microphone was off, and it was just noting that the 375 was only applied to the first number, which is the correct, because it's only in the 2025 budget. And so that's concern resolved right there. Anyone else wishing to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now, I know that we have two motions arising, plus we have our walk-on item, and so I am going to call a 10-minute break right now. Actually, it's going to be a 12-minute break. We're going to return at 2:20. that. Yeah. Okay, we are back. And so, Councillor Faubert, I'm going to turn it over to you. You have a motion, or two motions arising, so if you would bring your first one, please.
Whichever one the clerk puts up first will be my first one. Awesome. Okay, so I would like to move that council direct administration to return in Q4 of 2025 with a briefing on the community's ongoing circular economy efforts and information on how the new zero waste coordinator position's role could support circular economy objectives in the climate emergency action plan. And this motion is another evolution from the last time I put forward a motion regarding the circular economy. And one of the purposes of this motion is to continue the conversation and bring some more information back to council in Q4. And specifically because one of the motions at the Finance Committee that I did put forward that council approved was the zero waste coordinator position. And with that role, there is some, I think, incredible potential to move towards the vision that I have around circular economy for our community. And that's one where we leverage and we become a catalyst or a mechanism through which all the organizations that already operate in the circular economy come together and then, or not come together in a way that aligns and coordinates and creates potential for more economy, for more opportunities to divert waste from the landfill, and not just divert it from the landfill, but create economic opportunities for that material in a secondary market. I believe we have a very strong circular economy already. I think we have a very strong circular culture, one that goes back to growing up in Canmore as a small town where we would have large item pickup days where you put all the stuff you don't want at the end of your driveway, and everyone in town would have a week or the weekend to drive around, check out what was there, and anything that could be reused could be taken, and then everything else was cleared. And I think back to that time, and it was a lot simpler, but that truly was a circular economy type of program. And so I think that there is great potential in this area. I think it aligns with council's priorities of being an environmental leader, increasing affordability, and creating relationships. And I think that the waste coordinator position role, as well as more information on what's happening in our community, could help lead to potential in the future. I know that I'm not ready now to say what that is, but I would really like to keep this energy moving into the future and continue to have these conversations. So I look forward to the thoughts of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a couple of questions. In your motion, when you say a briefing on the community's ongoing circular economy efforts, I take that to mean basically what's going on around us. It's not what the municipality is doing, but what's happening in the community that would support circular economy. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think it's twofold, because I think that we are involved in some of it.
Okay.
And then other things are happening that we know of
Yeah.
and that we
But
support.
it's not just what the municipality is doing,
Yeah.
it's looking beyond.
Very much like, for
Okay.
example, a share and repair fair.
Right.
Like those kinds of efforts. And it just to sort of bring all the information about what is existing into one place.
And community cruisers taking bikes and things going through to the thrift store to an extent that's
Yeah.
circular, but I know there's money exchange as well. But and so my next question is to administration. I'm not sure if this is Dr. Cottle or Ms. Smithers. The question is just, with respect to timing, is this a reasonable time, given that, with hiring and bringing somebody on, et cetera? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think that timing works quite well, and we were pretty intentional about Q4 in terms of informing the waste coordinator, zero waste coordinator position scope of work, collecting information about where the town is partnering with community partners, where community partners are taking things on their own initiative. It allows us to bring a comprehensive lens to the circular economy initiatives in the community and reflect that information in the zero waste coordinator position description.
Sounds like a good exercise for this new position as part of them getting up to speed with what's going on in the community.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you for both those answers. I will definitely support this motion and believe that this will be very good information for the municipality to have and for our community to have, because it very well may be that through this effort, we can help incubate or be a catalyst for work done in the community around circular economy. Would anybody else like to speak to Councillor Faubert's motion? Councillor Graham.
Just a question for administration. Workloads are tight these days. We obviously have a new position coming on, but are there any other priorities that position has that wouldn't be fulfilled because of this initiative?
I would say no. It really is summarizing work that is already going on in the community and then using that to formulate some of that job description for the new position, which we would be needing to do anyways.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Smithers.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And Councillor Faubert, your second motion rising.
Thank you to my colleagues for helping me evolve on this one too. My second motion is that council direct administration to review the current community grants program process and return in Q3 of 2025 with recommendations for potential changes to the program. I'll say at this point in time, I'm unsure if Q3 2025 is the right, but I felt that one of the things that's important for motions is to have a timeline. I definitely felt that it should come to council before the next budget process in case those recommendations led to changes in the budget process. And I know that we increased what we provide for grants, our community grant program in this budget. And I sat on the community grant committee last year and I'm on it again this year. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to look at this program and potentially find ways to leverage the money that we invest in grants to our nonprofits, along with other organizations, to better support initiatives in our community and in the valley more broadly. I don't know what that exactly might look like, but I know that we have the team that works on grants is exceptional, and that by council giving this direction, we would then create the opportunity for them to come back with their advice, which I would like to hear. And so that is the situation I'm trying to get to with this motion, and I would like to thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. And so just a similar question to administration. I think this is Mr. Mackay. What are your thoughts with regards to the timing for this motion? Is it reasonable from administration's perspective?
I suspect so. I think to bring back recommendations under that timeline is reasonable. Any required policy changes or bylaw updates might require direction and then that work to be completed, which would exceed this timeline. But to bring back recommendations, it's reasonable.
Great. Thank you. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your motion, Councillor Faubert. I'm just curious about the timing of this. If you bring it back in Q3, you'll be bringing it back to a body that might not necessarily all be able to vote or make change. I'm wondering if you would consider a friendly amendment to Q4 so that the folks that are sitting around the dais are actually the ones that will be taking in the information and be able to make decisions.
I would be happy with Q4. I debated Q3 or Q4.
Yeah, no, and I get why Q3, and because, you know, trying to get our heads together for any, like, tweaks or updates to the next year's budget, but I think it's probably, you're just gonna be doing the presentation again, and in interest of being efficient with admin's time.
Okay, so a friendly amendment has been received.
Perfect.
And it's now noted on the screen, so thanks for that. I will certainly support this motion. It's good to turn our attention to all of our processes on a periodic basis, and I think it's good timing for this, and I appreciate Councillor McCallum's suggestion of Q4. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, thank you for both of those, Councillor Faubert. And now we'll move to our last item of the day. It's item H2. This is the Fire Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, FRIAA, FireSmart Capital Project, Larch 2025, Project 7391. And Deputy Chief Borgon, welcome to Council. We'll just wait for the screens to catch up.
Try it one more time. Again. We even give it a dry run before the presentation. I'm happy to give a verbal presentation if we can't get to any visual.
Oh, we'll give it just one more shot, and then if it doesn't cooperate, we'll take you up on your suggestion.
All right.
Okay. All right, we're gonna, is there a way to get the one,
From your computer, possibly?
any,
It's not even showing what's online anymore.
oh, we've got something changing there. Okay, well, in that case, we are going to take you up on your suggestion, Deputy Chief.
Okay.
The microphone's all yours.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing us to walk on this presentation. There was a detailed RFD that has been circulated for your reference prior to this meeting. My name is Michael Borgon. I'm the Deputy Fire Chief for the town of Canmore, and I'm here to present the Capital Project 7391, which represents phase 2 of our Larch Vegetation Management Project. This project is fully funded by a $162,000 grant from the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, FRIAA, with no financial impact to the town's tax base. So the recommendation is that council approve a new capital project, FireSmart 2025, Larch Project number 7391, as phase 2 of the Larch Vegetation Management Project. This has a budget of $162,000 and is fully funded by the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. So FireSmart in Canmore, wildfire continues to be the top-rated hazard in Canmore. Wildfire mitigation strategy reviews are completed to inform vegetation management activities and priorities. The town has been applying for and successfully obtaining FRIAA grants to achieve FireSmart outcomes and implement wildfire mitigation recommendations since 2007. So this is nothing new, it's just an extension. Again, very happy for FRIAA to be providing these grants. It's pretty phenomenal. In September 2024, Council approved Resolution 194-2024. Council approved the submission of an expression of interest for the 2024 Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, FRIAA, grant for a vegetation management fuel modification project. So the great news is the grant has been approved and is successful. I do have a map that I can circulate afterwards, just sort of explaining what the extension of this project is. So it's just the fuel mitigation and modification for the rest of the area. So through that, there's thinning of understory evergreen trees, pruning of limbs on remaining evergreen trees, removal of dead downed logs and dead standing trees, debris disposal through pile burning, and chipping removal. So again, administration recommends council approve capital project 7391, allowing us to proceed with phase 2 of the Larch management project, vegetation management project. This is a fully funded project with no cost to the town, further strengthening our community's wildfire resilience. This project is another step forward in our commitment to proactive wildfire risk reduction. Thank you for your time. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Looking to see if there are any questions from council. No, I think you covered all of the topics there, so we're all good to go.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I will move that the council approve a new capital project, FireSmart 2025, Larch, project number 7391, as phase 2 of the Larch Vegetation Management Project with a budget of $162,000 fully funded by the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, FRIAA grant. We're into our 18th year with fire smarting, and now with the fire guard in place and all the work that's happened in updating our emergency plans and communicating and educating around emergency preparedness as individuals, as well as our Voyant Alert system. This is all part and parcel of ongoing work to protect our community in the event of a wildfire. And so thank you for bringing this forward, and congratulations on the successful grant. And I look forward to this work moving forward if supported by my fellow council members. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And with that, I will move that we adjourn. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.